It's the first time that we're doing this session, so it's all brand new.
It is, and we're going to make a mistake or two. But hey, if any of you catch our podcast, you know that we can talk through most things.
Exactly. Let's talk about that first.
No, you need to
Oh.
tell them about the picture first. Look,
Oh,
this is very
yes.
special. I don't know whether you guys have noticed this, but it's Ignite Week, of course. And this was from our very first Ignite.
It is true.
And we thought we'd go with something business-like, serious.
Yes, proper.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Because that balance there is not quite right. We both should have had pink hats on. And that's a little bit like security and usability in that, I like the pink hat and I need my pink hat to be pink and tall and make me look big. And of course, you wore a shark.
Yes, exactly. So there's a message here. We
There
are
is.
all wearing different hats
Absolutely.
in the company.
All right, cool.
Yes, cool.
Are you going to
So,
control?
Do you want to introduce yourself first, maybe?
Steve Dalby. I've been in this game for a long, long time. Just to give you some idea, I was dealing with Tahoe. If you know what that is, then you know it was a long time ago. I am a consultant. I work with Office 365. Before that, SharePoint from when it was born. Again, if you know Tahoe, you know that was the code name for SharePoint when it first started.
Yeah.
So that's me, really. I'm on Steve. I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So my name is Marijn Somers. I've been dealing mostly with SharePoint and the business side of SharePoint for around 14 years now. So I started with SharePoint 2003. I love giving presentations and sessions like this. So I've been doing this for quite some time. I'm an MVP now for 2 years. Woohoo!
Well, 1 year and a
1 year and a half, let's
but
say.
it will be 2.
Okay. I've got two discs there, so I'm super proud of that one. Same thing. You can follow me on Twitter at Marijn Somers. You can link to me on LinkedIn. If you ever have questions or whatever, just reach out to me. Thank you very much. All right, and together we do this thing, which is called Office 365 Distilled. This is the podcast that we have been doing for almost 2 years.
Longer
now.
than you've been an MVP.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So almost 2 years now we've been doing this podcast. I don't know if you guys love podcasts. I just love podcasts. I listen to them all the time when I'm driving in the car. And the idea of this podcast is that we will talk about technology for about 50 minutes. And then we end with a whiskey tasting.
A whiskey that maybe you don't easily get hold of, that you've not heard of, that's a little different.
Exactly. Yes.
And the combination is great.
Yeah.
We used to do it the other way round. We tried doing the whiskey first and then talking around technology. And the sad truth is that we spoke more sense when we did it that way around. Well, it felt like it, but it didn't always work out.
No,
but
exactly.
This is a really good, very relaxed chat about technology. And a little bit about whiskey. So yeah, that's how we kind of got onto this, really. We started doing presentations in a contract we were working on, and then we turned it into this podcast. And here we are now talking to you guys while you're having a very nice Saturday evening, I guess. I know the weather's good where you are. I'm fairly sure it is, because for them, they've probably got drinks and dinner sorted out.
Oh, where's a whiskey?
Yeah.
Oh God. Anyway. Sorry about hijacking this slide. Sorry.
You go for it.
So in this session, in this next 50 minutes, we are going to bring you into a journey of usability versus security, because security is super important. We need to make sure that everything is set up in a good way. On the other hand, we also need to keep our end users pretty happy. So there's a fine balance that we need to take here.
And the truth of the matter is that when you try and secure something, depending on whether you go for really secure or really insecure, if you swap those around, really insecure, great usability, really secure, usability stinks.
Exactly. So we kind of need to find a fine line between those where it is still secure and still usable. So that's where we're gonna look for today. So we will be talking about different ways how to secure your environment, how to secure applications, how to secure your data that you're storing in Office 365. And as we already said, so we really want to make sure that you can keep your end users happy, but you can also keep your security team happy. And those two have most of the time very different interests and very different viewpoints. So we really need to make sure that they're all looking at it on the same way and make sure that everyone's still happy.
The key thing to remember here is they get paid based upon different goals and different objectives.
That's a good one. That's important. Yes.
It is.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to try and talk about. It's not going to be overly technical. It is about an IT pro. It is going to look at the business. One of the things that we found we do very well is we try and put the business perspective about all this technology. So if you've seen us speak before on Cortex and security, on Cortex and search, then we've very much looked at those of how can the business get involved in making that better for them. In this particular case, we're going to reference a whole bunch of security attributes, but we're going to look at where they fit in the process and how we can decide which ones work best and which ones don't. But we also want to try and give you the perspective of how they fit into that relationship between being an Office 365 service owner and being a network security kind of role.
Exactly.
All right,
yes.
I'll go this time. There we go.
Yeah. All right. So, excuse me. So what we will do is we will both play a different role. So I will play the role as a service owner. So I am somebody from the business. I'm marketing or HR, whatever, and I just want to do my job. I want to do my job with lightning quick speed. I want to share stuff. I want to work. I don't want to have any interruptions. I don't want to have any delays. It should all just work first time. And I just want to have the latest updates.
But my job is to make sure that you can do that by stopping people coming into our network and disrupting our service. And there's a cost associated with that. I may ask you to log in more times. I may ask your network to slow down a bit while we check things. But they're all there designed to give you that, well, not quite lightning quick service. I admit I might affect that, but to make sure it's there and that you can honor work. So I want to make sure the right people have got access to the right data. I want to control where our data goes. I want to stop the unwanted visitor, and I want to prepare for potential issues and potential breaks into our network. And we're both doing the same thing. You're creating the IPR, the business role, the product that we create, and I'm making sure that you can do that in a safe and secure way. So that seems like we're both trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, but you're trying to slow me down. So to be honest, I've got lots of questions.
Yeah, no, but I got lots of answers.
Good. All right. Let's get into it. All right.
Simple. Office 365 is very simple. We know this. Okay, that's what Microsoft designed it for. They took all of their products 15 years ago, they put them in the cloud, they created them as a service. So as long as I'm only talking about Office 365, then the tools that I use are all contained in the cloud. I can access them or I can't access them. It can decide who I am. It can decide my identity. So as a small business, Office 365 is very simple. It's almost kind of plug in and forget.
Of course, because when I'm working with a small company, what I just do is I go to office.com, I say create a new tenant, and 2 minutes later, and my credit card goes in, and 2 minutes later, I have my Office 365 environment.
Absolutely.
And I can have my people in there that are working and playing and sharing and doing their stuff.
And what we're relying on there is Microsoft's kind of 25,000 people big security organization around their data centers and around their network protection centers that are making sure that all the complicated stuff that business users to have to do. Remember, before the cloud, you'd go into a small business and yeah, you need a modem and a router and you need a firewall and you need a local server and you need all of that stuff is gone, which is great. So Office 365 in its own sense of the word is very simple. And there's a very easy way of managing the security of this, isn't there?
Is there?
There is.
Aha.
Secure Score.
It brings us to Secure Score. So Secure Score should be your first stop when you're setting up your tenant. Because Secure Score, what this will bring you is this will look at your environment and say your environment has a certain percentage of being secure. And that is one part. But the other part is it will also show you the actions that you can take to make your tenant more secure. Yes?
It's a lot easier than it used to be. You used to have a kind of random number. I remember when these first came out, we'd be going swapping Twitter messages and text messages. Hey, I've got a 43.
I've got a 60.
Yeah.
Yay. Yes.
But now it's a percentage. You're aiming for 100%. You're not unlikely to get 100%. But it makes suggestions to you what you can change, what you can improve, that will actually then increase the percentage. And I'm fairly certain that most of you have seen this. And if you haven't, by all means, go and have a look at some of these URLs in the slides, and it will actually assist and at least give you some direction.
Exactly.
But Secure Score is not just for not just for small, it's also for enterprises.
Oh, no, absolutely. Also, if you haven't looked at Secure Score, let's say the last 6 months, definitely take a look at it, because Microsoft revamped the whole Secure Score. So it's not that number anymore. It's a percentage, as Steve just said, but it is all just totally different. And it will also grab those other groups of information with it. So it will look at your identity. So it's got this extra part of the identity. Well, if you set up MIP, the Microsoft Information Protection that we're going to talk about later on, it will also allow you to score your data protection. It will also allow you to configure your device protection and the steps that you need to take to improve that security. So it will also look at your applications and your infrastructure as well.
I can also guarantee that there'll be 2 or 3 things on the list that you've never heard of that is going to ask you to do, because there's new things that come along all the time. And of course, if you're fairly new to the network or security space, some of this you will have seen a slide on, or you may have seen it in a presentation like today, but have no idea what to do with it. But there's a lot of guides and things. But there was something you said that is not going to ever happen, because we have an audience of IT professionals, and you're all professional, and I'm sure you go to your Secure Score at least once a week, if not once a month. Everybody does that, don't you?
Of course.
Yeah, I thought I could hear you.
Of course.
But we soon forget the habits of regular check-in. So diarize it. Friday morning, every 2 weeks, just pop up your Secure Score, make a note of it so you've got some kind of history, although there is a history in the application. And then just find out whether things have changed, whether Microsoft is checking new things or making new suggestions.
Yes. Also, what you can try to do is more from a business standpoint, is to make some agreement with the IT manager to say, okay, we promise to have a score of at least 40% all the time, and have that in there combined with some kind of incentive. If we can keep it above 40% all year long, we get a bonus.
We're going to talk a little bit about the team that makes sure that your Office 365 or your network or your applications are secure. I remember being with one of my team members in a company a few contracts back, and they were actually paid against Secure Score. So their boss had been to a presentation and they said, hey, this is what I want you to achieve. And if you fall below that, failed. If you keep above it, then you do well.
Because to be honest, there are 2 kind of things that you can do. So 2 kind of actions that Secure Score will bring you. So one thing is set up something. For example, don't have more than 5 people with full control over the full tenant.
Well, let's keep it more simple than that. It will count how many people are doing multi-factor authentication.
For example, yes,
and it will tell you need to increase it.
So that's the first part. So those are things that you can just do, take care of. And then the other part are actions that you need to do every week, every 2 weeks, once a month.
Run a report.
Reports, exactly. Like weird logins, for example, or weird emails that have been sent
Check out who's accessing most PowerPoints this week, and they only did 2 last week, and this week they're doing 400.
Yeah, stuff like that. So those are the 2 actions that you can take to keep that Secure Score up.
I was just looking at the script, because we've got a script here just to make sure we cover it. And I
love the statement. We do have the script.
It's cool. But ignorance is bliss. It's not a tool to ignore, and forget and assume that this is doing it for you. We're going to talk a little bit about tools that will automate a lot of these things for you later on. But for now, Secure Score is purely a monitoring dashboard and something that you should be accessing on a regular basis.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So we talked about that simple approach, but when things start to get complicated, they get bigger, and responsibility for the protection and the security of the network kinds of change. And you can see in this sort of representative image here, we've moved from a simple, organization only working in the cloud to an organization that has moved to the cloud. So, hey, we're going to transfer a bunch of information to and from the cloud, but we also have systems that are sitting locally now in our network. And as a user on this network, I need to connect to locally to my systems, all right, but also to connect to the cloud. So as a cloud service owner, you don't care, do you?
No, I don't, because my requirements are just the same. I've got my PowerPoints and my Word documents that I need to share with the people from my team, and that I need some external consultant to come in and look at my stuff and do things like that. So my requirements didn't change at all. Well, so is this only gonna add more complexity?
Yeah, it does. It does get complex, very complex, and we're going to get into some of the details of this in a short while. Because now I need to know whether I am going to be authenticated to my local equipment, which, whether it's an Oracle system, for example, running payroll, and the payroll people just don't like their stuff being in the cloud, so I have to do two things, or it's my content in the cloud on Office 365, and they're in two different locations. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. So you don't mind this as long as...
Well, I don't mind as long as it doesn't slow down the way that I want to work.
Yeah.
So what if I want to work on a Sunday evening after my favorite television show is done, and I just get this brilliant idea? Or when I'm showering, I always get my brilliant ideas when I'm showering.
Does the laptop not get wet?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't go with me. But I jump out of the shower, put my towel on, and I just want to start working. Will it allow me to do that?
Yes, of course it will allow you to do that. That's a use case. So, as a user, I want to be able to dive out of the shower and put my latest and greatest idea straight into the system. You like that use case?
Yes,
it
absolutely.
should be in everybody's use case.
Yes.
All right, let's just take a look at here. Look, things get bigger because now I have somebody that's designing that network in the top left-hand side. So this network person is actually going to combine different kinds of networks and subnetworks and different kinds of computers into quite a complex array. And it could well be that my laptop is registered in one domain and my user account is in another domain, which will not please you very much because that will slow things down. Yeah. So as a Office 365 consultant, as a service owner as you are, you of course will go to the network and go and get, hey, look, our requirements are, for example, laptop users, same domain, please, because, when they authenticate to the cloud, I don't want to have to authenticate the laptop and separate it off from the user and all those kinds. So the network has got a particular kind of role to do. They need to make sure that network is secure, that people can't get to it and break into it. And the people there, network security, they don't trust the cloud. It's an inbuilt 0% trust mechanism they have. And I know we'll touch on that a little bit. They don't really see the cloud. Why do we want to go to the cloud? I've got my network. You can work on this. And because you have to persuade them.
Yeah, so they actually are the keepers of their own castle, and they don't want to have people from outside getting into the castle.
Yeah, and part of the problem we have here, of course, being virtual, is if I was live with you, I'd say, hey guys, put your hands up. How many people actually have good working relationships with security and good working relationships in network? And it doesn't matter on a Monday whether you're all friendly. On a Wednesday, if they think the network needs reorganizing, they will reorganize it without telling you.
Yes.
Unfortunately. Yeah. All right, it happens. So developing this relationship between the security people and the network people is absolutely key. The security people, from their perspective, they're going to make sure that the right people are accessing the right data and making sure that any regulatory or any rules that you need to follow based upon what industry you're in, they're all being run. And they will run reports on a regular basis because they're really, really good at that.
So what you're actually saying is that me as a service owner,
that's you just there.
Yes, exactly. I love my hair there. Yeah, okay.
It works.
Why am I a girl, actually?
Well, actually, I've been asking you that for a while.
Okay. Anyway, so what you actually mean is that me as a service owner, I need to combine my forces with the network people, with security people, telling you what I need, how I want to work. And what you will do is you will find mysterious ways to make that happen?
Yeah, it's the Microsoft black magic, of course, that sort of pulls it all together. But it's not just about that. It's also about explaining to them what you need. So you're going to basically go into their network and say, I need a connection that's going to go from that network to the cloud, and it needs to work this way, and it needs to be fast, and these are my service requirements. And the first thing they're going to say no, and their management won't allow you to say no, you know, and secure. So then you've got to kind of persuade them. And some of the things that we're going to deal with in this session will help you to persuade them, will help you not to try and change their minds, but to persuade and check that you're secure and that Microsoft is, you know, as good as they said they would be, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also a bunch of key decisions around here. And it's all to do with what these guys call defense in depth.
All right.
Let's take a look at that.
Let's take a look at that. Yes. Ooh.
Yeah. So I didn't create this image. I just copied it. But there are lots of them around. If you just do a Google search for defense in depth, then hey, you know, this type of thing will come up. And effectively what it means is that your crown jewels, your data, your
property,
IPR, is actually secured in the center, and that you only let people in from one ring to the next, whether they're allowed in there, whether they are suitably protected, all right, whether they have their car, let's not go there, whether they're appropriately, you know, they're secure, etc., etc.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a number of things through those rings,
circles. Yeah.
So firewalls, we know what a firewall is. Yes.
Yes.
That basically allows only the right kind of data through. So that's fine. Spam filter.
Yeah. That is helping me to protect from those 1,000 emails saying that I should have a penis enlargement.
Or that you could, you know,
buy drugs and
yeah. I can see you have a lot of interesting emails.
Yes.
All right. Antivirus, of course.
Yes, I definitely need that. But isn't that just built into my machine?
Yeah, it is. But part of that machine is part of this defense in depth.
Okay.
And not only that, do we allow every machine to have different antivirus, or do we want to keep them updated at the same time? So each one of these items, there's a whole chunk of work behind it, and there's a whole group of people that need to be able to maintain it.
Yes.
So, but antivirus is probably one of the key ones, because it's malware. This is the bit that could put a piece of code on your machine that could make all of this useless. So it's not just about, you know, viruses that delete the drives anymore. It's actually now about code that will give them a backdoor into your network. And of course, we have all of this about hijacking your data and your network and all those kinds of things.
Check. Yes.
Upgrades.
Oh yeah, I want to have the latest and greatest.
You want the latest and greatest. But upgrades are important in terms of that defense. Because if there's one place that if I can get into is a Microsoft upgrade file. If I can get into a Microsoft upgrade file as a bad guy, all right, then Microsoft are going to push that around to every Windows 10 device around the world.
It's true, yes.
But of course, they're very well protected, and Microsoft have got all those guys with big guns and everything else that stop that happening. But of course, your network person will say, hey, no updates on my network unless you've tested this first. The security person would say, hey, we're not changing this code on any of the laptops around the organization unless it's been tested first. And so this is part of the change requests, part of the, hey, there's an upgrade coming this week, part of the, let's do this, and do we have to do any penetration tests, yes or no? Do we need to just check the new functionality, yes or no? Will the functionality change the way we access our Oracle systems? Will the new Edge browser that will get rolled out in this update do X and Y and Z? So there's a lot of changes there, and same with those update files. So those updates could change anything else. But if you don't have those update files, then
you leave open vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. So upgrades, changing features, updates, adding security protection.
I know a lot of my customers who are, when they get that little pop-up like, oh, there's an update available, they just click it away because I don't want to do updates right now. Yeah,
that's why we have tools where we can sit there and say, you know, we know we're going to bother you. We know you don't want to do this upgrade. So we'll give you one chance to say no, and then we're going to force it on you anyway. Yeah. All right. Access management. Absolutely crucial. Because
that
is this person allowed access to that data, and what can they do when they get there? The famous menage a trois. Okay, those three things are crucial and across all the network. And if I have one of them not right, I have a weakness. So this is the data, the real data, and the data is well protected. This is, I can read it, I can edit it, I can write it. These are the rights I have, and this is me, and I can prove who I am. So when we talk about access management, proving who you are is absolutely key. And I know we're going to talk about that in some detail later on.
Absolutely.
Encrypting that content, that is also key. Okay, and then monitoring around this area so that we're constantly trying to decide whether the antivirus is updated or whether somebody's trying to get in, whether the users are accessing it properly, whether you are getting lightning fast speed.
Yes, because that is what I want.
And then we get into more user training because, hey, they need to know that this is going to take a little while longer than it used to do because of all these extra securities. And of course, we're talking about backup until we get to our data. So that defense in depth is not the only one in the world, and different organizations will have different rings depending on what they want to get to. So they may have different rings inside their data that say, hey, you're allowed here and you're not allowed there, for example. So anyway.
You know that is all pretty well and good, but this is all about my network. So my content is not in the network. My content is all in Office 365.
We've thought about that.
Oh.
So we also do it for Office 365, and we also do it for your internal network. So there are different tools available for Office 365. So in that simple scenario we talked about at the beginning, of course, when I go to the cloud, I want to go through this. I'm pointing at my screen here. You can see me doing that, yeah. But I want to go through those different layers and make sure that I'm appropriately protected. So that's what you get when you have multiple cloud services. You end up with multiple layers of authentication. And of course, you could now not just have one cloud service. You could actually have 3 cloud services.
Exactly, because maybe I'm not just working with Office 365. Maybe I'm also working with SAP. I'm working with other systems.
Amazon services,
exactly.
Salesforce, that kind of stuff. I agree entirely.
So that means that I've got a multitude of these blocks, all with their separate security. So will that not make it super slow when I'm trying to access data from a certain system?
But it makes it super safe. Yeah? I get paid super safe. So it makes it super safe. So I'm comfortable. Okay. All right. there are ways. And it's that words there, that trust between those systems. And I'm going to go on a little bit quicker just to go through these. But so this is you.
That is me.
It is you.
Oh, look at me.
We know it's you because actually we can match your face, and so we've confirmed that it's definitely you.
Oh, cool.
And I've also confirmed it on the other system as well. So now you can log in on any of those to get to your data A and C.
That is cool, but I don't want to like log in 20 times for every different thing. I just want to log in once in the morning when I log on to my machine. And I don't want to log in again for my Exchange and again for my SAP and again for my Salesforce. I get it.
You're a difficult bugger to please.
Ah, yes.
All right. So we have some truths for that.
Okay.
So what we do is that we decide that on one of our systems, we confirm who you are.
Okay.
And then we say to this system here, okay, if you get approval from that system for this user to log on, then they don't need to log in again.
All right.
So that way I can give you access to data A and data C, but actually just use your single login to do it. And I know we all know this, and I know you see it happen, okay? But lots of things can get in the way with this. I'm working with a number of organizations. Of course, they're all working from home, and that's why we're doing this virtually. And they still end up having to log into several systems at the beginning of the day, just to set up that access management on the left-hand side, just to set it up, and then they're trusted for maybe 12 hours. Okay. And then after 12 hours, they kind of reset, and then, yes, they may need to.
It's like a token that disappears after a number of time.
Yeah. Okay. But that's what we end up doing. We have to do trust between those systems. So the real problem is, which one do we trust?
That's a very good question.
Now,
so do you want to trust your own local environment, or do you want to trust the Office 365 one?
Exactly. All right. Yeah. I'm network and security. I want to trust the one that I can go to the glass window in the data center and go, yes, it's that machine there. I can see it. I can touch it. It's turned on. I can connect to it, and it's doing. That's the one I want to trust. And this is part of the design decisions that people will take when they first go to the cloud, anybody's cloud. So let's simple scenario. big organization moving to Office 365. And I'm constantly surprised that not everybody's already in the cloud. There are still people still moving into the cloud. Anyway, so then at that point, they make a decision. Now, as a network and security guy, I actually say the master is going to be my internal network. And there's good reasons for doing that. I already have processes in there for managing and adding users. I have processes for counting, taking away users. I have processes when they move from one way to the next and all those kinds of things. And Microsoft have got a whole bunch of tools now that will allow you and easily allow you to do that connection and make those kinds of choices. But you do need to make a decision of which becomes the master and which becomes the servant. Inevitably, what happens is this. Okay, don't tell anybody, but I'll tell you. Inevitably, what happens is that when you first connect to the cloud, the network and security people, the team of people that's making this decision, will force you to have your internal Active Directory as the master. Okay, and the reason that they do that is because it's their comfort level and they see this as a risk. Inevitably, Active Directory is never kept updated because it's a huge beast, especially in a multinational organization. And then after about 6 to 9 months, when they start to realize that some of the tools we're going to talk about in a minute or two are available in the cloud but not easily available on premise, then they kind of slowly start to change their mind. Exactly. I was in the Cologne SharePoint Saturday a few weeks ago. Microsoft did a keynote presentation there, and he said one of the really good tools for persuading these people to actually realize the cloud is because of those tools. Yeah, you know, if you actually make the cloud your master, and you get over that hump and you make sure that it's the one that everybody confirms, there's a whole bunch of additional security tools easily enabled, all reported against, blah, 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 and all the things we're looking at here today. So which one to trust is important. But we've seen trust before, haven't we?
We have. Actually, last year we were at Ignite and we were at the keynote of Satya Nadella, and he was talking about tech intensity, how an organization can grow technologically, and he actually had this formula in there. And I have to admit, at some point I kind of wanted to have this formula tattooed on my body, because I just love that formula, because it talks about how technology adoption, which is, as a service owner, that's my job, with the technological capabilities that we have, which is Microsoft's job, that if we combine that, but if we, how do you call that? Square it by trust. That part, if we can move up that trust, that means that our tech intensity will go way up, much higher than if we just do that tech adoption or tech capability part, if we do that up.
Yep, so tech adoption and tech capability to the power of trust. That's what he was looking for.
The power of trust,
the power
exactly.
Of trust, the power of love. No, let's not go into karaoke mode. No, we'll give that a miss. So it's important. That capability, though, is what we were just saying earlier, is that because it's the cloud, because they're cloud-based, the ability to update, regular change, add new tools and everything else. I have a bit of a project at the moment where we're doing the power forms, you know, the power apps stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And for a period of 4 months, we had it turned off because of security issues and reasons. So we enabled it at the beginning of this year, and then we just re-enabled it. Completely changed. In that period of 3 or 4 months, with the licensing model changed on us, even though we kind of knew, but all of a sudden we had to set up for new licenses, we had new functionality, so the speed of change is really, really impressive. So the sooner you can get that team of people working together as a trust organization, then the more powerful you can become very, very quickly.
Exactly. Yes. So where do you start off? So what is your, you've set up your tenant, or you're working with your company, you're going to the cloud. Where do you start with your security team? So the best place to start is actually the Office 365 Security and Compliance Admin Center. So you will find that admin center next to all the other admin centers in your Office 3 or Microsoft 365 admin center. And this will act as the starting page or the starting admin center for your whole security journey. So here you can set up your alerts. Here you can do all your classifications. You can play around with your DLP, with the MIP. You can define your records. You can do all the things that you need to do, or most of the things that you need to do security-wise.
This is also the point that will make the rest of your team, those network and security people, go, wow, you mean you can get to tell this from this one location? And you can go, yep. Why don't we make this the master? You know, show me your one-page report for your internal network where you can tell me all about your DLP stuff, where you can tell me all about your network losses, where you can tell me all about your intrusions, where you can tell me there's this is a really, really good place to be able to say, guys, look, we can do this from one place here. And this is only the baby. Above this, we've got Azure.
Yes.
Yes, so we've got security and compliance at Azure level. So, and of course, your security and your network people also need to be aware of that. So potentially, this may be where you want to go, but of course, you can also show them that there's a mama version, you know, at the Azure level that will read these things.
Exactly, because as a service owner, I don't care about the Azure. I don't care about the background platform.
I know, lightning, quick speed.
The who now?
Lightning, quick speed.
Oh, lightning, quick speed. No, exactly. But what I do care about is how can I set something up as a record? Because for me, as a service owner, for example, I'm in HR. I need to have all my HR contracts classified as a contract, so that I can make sure that only the allowed people can access them, but that I can also audit them. Because if I get a security audit or an HR audit, I need to prove that only these people can access it. I need to make sure that when people leave the organization, definitely when I'm in Europe, I am all aligned with the GDPR rules. So as a service owner, this might be an important page for me as well, because I need to make sure that I'm just all good with all the rules and all the things that I need to do, how I can set up things, what the things that I want to set up would be, like if I want to classify something as internal only.
We're going to get to this. We're going to get into more detail.
Okay.
So let's not go too heavy.
That's okay.
But what is interesting about Marijn's role as a service owner is he wants everything. You notice that? He wants everything.
Of course.
He wants his record management. Yeah. We're not going to cover record management in any more details there. It's a completely separate subject. But we are going to cover things like data loss and information governance and labels. So let's just start looking fairly quickly, because there are tens and tens and tens of these different services. So we've chosen 5 or 6 just to go through to identify them for you to go and start researching yourself.
The most important ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so let's go with the obvious one here. Look, multi-factor authentication, MFA. So,
wow, what does that mean, multi-factor authentication? Because it sounds so infinitely complex. Is that, for example, when I'm looking at 9 pictures and I need to say where it says, show me all the pictures that include a car or a tree?
That's actually just to show how stupid you are.
Okay.
That's a stupid test. We're not going to go into that because that would be disrespectful.
Okay.
But that's, of course, just to prove that you're not a computer, which many of us know anyway. But let's just move on. So multi-factor authentication is looking at different ways that you identify yourself. So typically, traditionally,
username, password.
That's one of them. So that's something you know.
Okay.
All right. Then you have something you are.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Good looking.
Yes.
All right. I don't know whether there's a category in Hello for good looking. We'll have to check with Microsoft. That would be good.
Okay.
So is the how beautiful you are part of your identification process on a scale of, that's how Facebook started.
Anyway,
let's move on. So something you know, password, something you are, some biometric, and something you have.
My retina scan,
a card or an identity.
Okay.
And it's just the same as you do with a passport. You know, nowadays when you travel from country to country, they have the biometrics. They have that stored in there. You own the passport and you're carrying it, and they can compare your photograph.
So it is what I know, it's what I am, and what I have.
Correct. All right. And basically, with a single password, you're only using one-factor authentication.
It's just what I know.
Correct.
And you need at least 2 of.
Well, that's what multi-factor authentication says. So 2 out of 3 things is usually acceptable.
Yeah.
And then potentially a third if you're looking at super sensitive secret content.
If I'm working for the bank or the Ministry of Defense, I might have some more. Yeah. Okay.
And the thing about this multi-factor authentication is that it never stops at just 2. It never does, because those network guys and those security guys, they want multi-factors of authentication. The more levels of authentication, okay,
the better, the safer. Yes.
And it can slow you down tremendously.
Yes.
Okay, so you have to really get that dividing line. So for example, the network guy will have proxy servers whenever you go from one part of a network to another. So if my laptop is in this network, I can access these and these services. So I'll turn things off and I'll turn things on. And then when I'm on this part of the network, so when I go and visit a different office, when I connect by VPN. So really you need to stay on top of making sure that the appropriate URLs that you need access to are available at the different points. And that, again, is another factor of authentication, whether you're allowed in this part of the network or not allowed in that part of the network.
Check.
So it can get quite interesting. More importantly, the thing you and your team need to look at here, so your network security, is that if something doesn't work, I can change it quickly. So if Microsoft change a URL for something, and they've been doing that over the last year quite a lot, admin app, power app, automate at Microsoft.com, that kind of stuff, from Flow. You need to be able to go, hey, this morning this has stopped, and they need to have systems in place that they can change them. So you can negotiate. Look, I don't mind you having a lot of control on what I can see, but I need you to be able to change it quickly. So multi-factor authentication is important. So 2 levels are normal, but yeah, it can change.
It could be more.
Hello, we'll touch on here, which is Microsoft's passwordless process.
Oh yeah. So the thing when you have a Surface, for example, or one of those Logitech Brios, that it can log you in with your face scan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So rather than having to remember the password, they're doing 2 things here. Instead of something they're saying something you are and something you have, because Intune, which we'll cover a little bit later on, knows that that's my laptop. So that's something you have. They know it's yours.
Yeah.
And then when you obviously log in, then they can say something you are, which is your hello, and then it can authenticate you that way. So there's a number of things that can be used here.
Okay, cool.
So Intune. Intune is, again, we're going to start getting quicker on these guys, because Intune it's a session in its own right, as you know. But I want to.
Oh, it's a conference on its own. There's so many things that you can do with Intune.
So what we're trying to do here in these last 5 minutes or so of the presentation is just identify these areas so that you can go and look at them. But effectively what we're doing here is we're securing our devices, and everything is mobile now, whether it's a phone or a laptop.
True. Yes.
Okay? Because you want to be able to go out the shower. You don't necessarily need your laptop, but you do want to be able to get to your phone and do the same thing.
Absolutely. Like, kids these days, when they get out of school, get out of university, they don't want a laptop anymore. They can just work with their phones.
That's true, and it's known that new student startups, people leave earlier if they don't have the right mobile device.
The right devices, yeah.
But this kind of stuff can actually bring your own device type of technology, because they can isolate a secure space in any device and say that's the company's bit in there.
Yeah.
And anything else here I don't care about, but that bit in there is the company's. And then if the device is lost or the data, or you leave the organization, they can lock that down.
And they can wipe off that organization part of the data.
I can still remember the presentation at SharePoint conference, where they actually showed you this service. It was actually quite impressive that first time they did it.
Okay.
So the Intune device management can make your network and your end devices far more efficient and far more secure. But again, in 2 minutes.
Yeah, but this is also the part where you configure your policies. So when you start up your machine, it will look at your environment and it will load up a number of policies, things that you can do, things that you can't do, places that you can access. So that is this as well.
So
ATP,
advanced threat protection. So this is doing things that used to be done kind of on the laptop mainly, but now it's really part of the cloud. So from here, they can do things like making sure that when we download an attachment, it's not got any viruses or any of those bugs in it.
So this is actually a virus scan on the level of my tenant.
Yes, it is kind of, but it also does end-to-end protection. So it will actually say there's the device, there's the cloud, and it has lots of security policies between the two, and it checks. So it does things like checking the document is not got any bugs in it. It does things like checking the URL is a safe URL. If you copy the URL to somewhere else, it will actually kind of do a change and a copy. So
I actually have seen that when I copy a URL into my Outlook, it actually has this little spinning wheel next to it, and it changes the URL behind it into a safe, secure link.
It means that people can't follow the URLs that you traditionally go to, so that it's against part of that phishing expedition stuff.
Cool.
So again, very quickly, this does real-time reporting of what it's seeing, how many URLs you're clicking on. It can even do attack simulations, so it can even pretend that I'm a bad guy, and it sends you in and works out what it's going to do, so it can learn. When we talk about Sentinel a little bit later, then it's cool. But advanced threat protection, you know, the Microsoft 365 licenses have this in built. You need to understand it and need to implement it. And your network and security guys, they will love you for this. They can't get this on premise. Yeah, so they would love you. So again, turn them into it. You're cool. Very similar process, but this time it's focused around the content is Microsoft information.
This is your data that is going to be protected.
Yeah. This is basically saying that, okay, that I have my data stored in a safe place on my bring your own devices. What if I want to email it out of that device and send it somewhere else? What if I want to take away the memory chip and I want to try and throw that into a bad guy's machine and try and pull that stuff off? So what this does is it allows you to categorize that content and identify the content you just don't want led anywhere else. So this is where you get those sensitivity labels. This is secret,
the whole classification part.
Okay. And in the last 2 years, Microsoft have kind of tripled and quadrupled and 10 times the power of this, without actually increasing your license fee either. Just bear that in mind. You know,
awesome. Thank you, Microsoft.
We're getting all of that stuff, and they are constantly expanding it. And with things like user voice, you can go in and say, actually, what I want to do is protect this content this way. A perfect example. Most people are working in VPNs because they're working from home currently. What happens when you want to print something? Because your printer is not a secure device.
It's just a printer you have at home.
And because my laptop is tied down by Intune, I'm not allowed to connect a printer to it because that goes against my policies.
So that's okay. I'll just email it to my own Gmail account, that document.
But it's sensitive. It won't allow you to because the label's telling you not to. So one of the things that could be done here is you could have a print at home label. So instead so I can classify something as print at home, and then I can set a policy that says after 2 days or 2 hours, then that is not valid anymore, which is just enough time to email it into my personal email account and print it on my local machine. And then 2 hours later, it's gone, and I can't email it further on. I can't screen scrape it. It does all those kinds of protective. So very practical way of Microsoft information protection, being able to do print at home so that you don't have to compromise your devices by being able to add printers. So
awesome.
So that was pretty cool. I'm fairly sure, guys, that when you look at this stuff, you go, I just don't have time for this. And that's the biggest part of the problem here. So it's like record management, you know, it always ends up falling to the bottom of the list of things and time.
We'll do that after we roll out everything.
So you need to sort of think about the benefits and the advantages of this. So if you don't kind of do the MIP stuff and you don't get the baseline sort of rolled out, then when you suddenly have this great idea like print at home labels, you can't do it without sort of resetting this stuff up. So things like record management, things like MIP, really put it on your agenda to just get the baseline in, just get the minimum in, so that when you need to build on something quickly, you can react quickly and move forward. And as an IT pro, that's our job. We need to react quickly to user requirements and user stories.
DLP, awesome. Yes. So this is actually where you're gonna protect important data to be getting out. So for example, your credit card details or personal, what's it called? Personal numbers, your
social security
number.
What is your social security number?
I've got no idea.
Okay.
So that's why I write it down and then I'll email it to you if you want to have that. Yes.
This works hand in hand with those labels. And this is where the policies get defined. So the data leakage protection is generally a policy. And that policy is any email sent by Marijn cannot be forwarded onto somebody else as a policy, because we know that you are an important CIO of an organization, and really, you need protecting from yourself. And so I can put that policy in place.
Story of my life. Yes.
So data leakage protection is about those policies, and you'll see this applied in so many different places. External connectors. So in the Power Automate, it's a DLP policy that stops you setting a workflow up that forwards my email automatically to Google. That's a DLP policy. So data leakage protection is across everywhere. And this has now actually got its own PowerShell coding. So you can actually set this stuff up by going bang, and then there's a new policy.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hey,
yes.
I got somebody's social security number which I want to share. Well, I was kidding. I just want to tell that it's 10 minutes you have for that session. Thank you. Please continue.
No, we are aware.
Yes.
We're having too much fun.
Yes.
And it's good fun watching everybody sleep. No. Let's just drop these off. We'll be there in a few minutes.
5 minutes. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, data leakage protection. So it's about where we apply those policies.
Sure.
One thing that people should be aware of is that this stuff is all interlinked. Yeah, that's the advantage of the cloud, and the big selling point to our network and security people is that I got a policy and I can work out how to apply it using MIP. All right, and I can do it on ATP in terms of my emails.
So you're saying this will automatically do and my email and my documents and my applications,
whether I'm on SharePoint or whether I'm on Exchange. Yes,
all these things: Teams, SharePoint, Exchange, everything.
No,
awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
This is super cool. All right, and this is this is about 10 weeks of training course to do this. It's so big, but in very, very simple terms, it basically uses AI and machine learning, to try and identify issues that you're already having. Now, this is at an Azure level, so it's right across the cloud. But from an Office 365 perspective, it will basically go, hey, 6 people are emailing to that location, and now 600 people have suddenly started, and it will go, I'm going to close that down. Okay.
Wow.
So it's able to kind of make those preemptive decisions. It's also
so this is a security guy on steroids.
This is a security guy on steroids.
So why do I still need to pay you and not just this guy?
Because somebody needs to program him.
Okay.
But actually, that is actually a really interesting question, and not one for today. But this is a collection, a detection, an investigation, and a response tool. Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't only look at it, but it will also take action.
It will do.
Okay.
And our next tool will do a similar thing. So this is obviously within Azure, but the CASB, and we're getting close to our last few slides now, folks. So the CASB, or Cloud Access Security Broker, is a sort of concept that's not owned by Microsoft. It's actually something they've bought into, so they do have a tool. But of course, if I have multiple clouds, I want to be able to apply policies across the same policies across those clouds. So I have those defense in depth kind of scenarios, but I also have policies that say, hey, this content must not be emailed anywhere or passed anywhere, or those kinds of things. And so CASB can look at multiple places. So it's very difficult to get into this. It's a bit complex, but imagine that this is a proxy server in the cloud that anybody can use. So it can decide what I'm allowed access to and what I'm not. But behind it, it has the connections to your Salesforce, your Office 365, and all those kinds of things. And my VPN now just points directly to it. So now wherever I'm going to, I'm always going through those same policies and those cloud access security brokers. Immensely complex to set up the policies. I mean, obviously you can do the simple out of the box stuff, but for example, and then the sort of thing this can do is, if I have a document that is secret, and I can turn around and say, I've got a secret document, must never be on a public SharePoint site. This is able to monitor that and say, okay, and now I'm going to make that site private. So it can go in and make those changes. If I, in Salesforce, try and send a document that has not been released yet to somebody, then it's able to go, hey, no, that sensitive document is not allowed to be sent to those customers. So it's able to do those policies by being able to exchange and Salesforce data between those. This technology is growing, and it's going to get more complex. We're on the last slide. Okay.
Key takeaways.
Key takeaways.
Yes. I love that first one. Managing Office 365 in an organization. It is a team effort.
Yeah.
You need the security guy and the network people, and you also need your service owners, because they need to tell those people what they want to do, how they want to work, what ways or what devices or kinds of things that they want to have.
The other thing you should remember, we're using network and security as a generic term. You've got compliance officers and regulatory officers as well.
Yes.
So they're your friends, but they're also your biggest enemies. Yeah. If you're in a financial organization, security is king. They can just make you do stuff you really don't need to do, even if you think it's silly, but security rocks. So, you've got to work in and make sure that you talk to these people on a regular basis. Keep updated with some of the things we've talked to you about here and the other things that we've not. They change constantly. I talked about our Power Automate updated. We had an issue with it, so we kind of closed it down for a few months while we got it sorted out. And then when we turned it back on again, our design documents were not valid anymore because it had changed so much. So it's constantly improving and changing. And just as a final takeaway, a final word from me, and I'll then pass over as we do on all of our podcasts for Marijn to close down. Okay, have fun doing this. This is what we live for, yeah? Our job is to sort of provide that level of service, but we also take a responsibility for our organization's security and networking. So have fun doing it as well. You've got 1 minute and then they've got 3 minutes for questions.
Well, thank you so much for listening to us, to bear with us. Are there any questions? Let's open up the room.
Yeah, we sent them all to sleep.
Might be. Any questions?
I can see somebody flashing away there, but I can't see the...
Yeah, maybe if anybody has any questions, they can send you through tweets. You can
I
share
like
your
that one.
coordinates. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
So I will put in the chat I wanted to put in the chat. So Steve, please add an @ symbol. I'll put our Twitter account names in here. So @SciSteve, @Marijn Somers. So feel free to ask us all kinds of questions.
I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you liked the fact that we rocked. We wanted to make it informal. We wanted to make it fun. We wanted to just give you enough to pique your interest. Please let us that we're good. Conditional
access, definitely. Yes, we did talk about that when we were rehearsing this. It is definitely for me as a service owner something that is very important. Absolutely.
Gareth, thank you about that. It was in the notes, but I think we missed it. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Signing off.
What brand of whiskey next? Actually, we have a couple of choices. We've got some Swedish that was sent over by Sven, if you caught the last podcast. The one that's stored down a coal mine is intriguing.
Yes, it is crazy. So they put this whiskey
we haven't got time,
in a
but
barrel.
That's the one we're going to try. Catch it on the podcast.
Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.